Okay, hi everyone. I'm Deborah, a naturopath at Nourish in Petone, Lower Hutt. And with me today is Greg Macpherson from SRW, which is Science Research Wellness. So welcome, Greg. Thanks for joining me in this NatChat, which is part of our Naturopathic Medicine Week, which is facilitated by the Naturopaths and Medical Herbalists of New Zealand, NMHNZ. And our focus for doing this each year is to showcase what our naturopaths and medical herbalists bring to the community. And it's all about kind of bringing our communities together and working with our suppliers and people that we work with in our day-to-day clinics or businesses or however it is that we're out there doing our thing. For those that are watching this during the week, please remember to check out the website, naturopathicmedicineweek.co.nz, for more events that are on and around the country. Some are actually even in person this year, which is quite exciting given that we can now do that. And there's also the YouTube channel where these videos will be uploaded to, so you can watch them at any time. And there is a prize to enter into a draw for, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce Greg and then we'll get on with the conversation. So Greg is the founder of SRW Laboratories. He's a cellular health expert, biotechnologist, and author of Harnessing the 9 Hallmarks of Aging to Live Your Healthiest Life. And we'll talk a bit more about that coming up. And for more than 30 years, Greg has worked at the intersection of technology and health fields, excuse me, and more recently in the last decade working in the biotechnology sector, specifically focusing on the aging process at the cellular level. And I had to write all that down because it was getting very technical for me. Good news is that Greg grew up in Otaki, which is not far up the line from where I live, and it's a small but very growing and thriving community town on the Kapiti coast. So he's local, kind of. All right, Greg earned his Bachelor of Pharmacy degree at the University of Otago Medical School in 1992, then got involved with a number of technology-driven startups, including founding a pharmacy that specialised in providing healthcare to older adults in residential care facilities, bringing the first robotic dispensing machines into New Zealand, and achieving the first licence to provide wholesale packing service to the pharmacy sector. Phew, okay, pretty impressive stuff. So welcome again to this NatChat. What I thought we could do is start, excuse me, I'm getting over a bit of COVID here and my throat is going to go. So I'll endeavour to do less talking. So I thought we could start by just getting a better understanding of the, not working, what, why, how you came to SRW. And then maybe look at the 9 hallmarks of aging. Not the best start. Sorry about that. So I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah, and great to have the opportunity to talk to you and talk with you and your colleagues in the NatChat community. So naturopathic community. So yeah, I'm a pharmacist by trade. And have been doing that for the last 30 years or so, but the last decade focusing more on the cellular biotechnology and specifically cellular aging, so exactly what you said, and really even going deeper than that or more focused, and that was on mitochondria. So for the past 8 years of the last decade or so, it's been all around these mitochondria and how they work and what goes wrong with them as we get older and in certain diseases. But I founded SRW Laboratories because I looked up essentially and just, I guess just perhaps a bit slow, but realized, wait a second, there's more than one organelle in the cell. And so SRW's approach is really to look at it, look at health from a functional medicine perspective or a functional cellular health perspective, and start to build formulations that support all facets of the cell. And I came across a paper that was written in 2012. That paper, 2013, that paper was in Cell called The Hallmarks of Aging. And in that paper, it outlined the 9 main drivers of aging in the cell. And with my pharmacy brain in there, I thought, well, wait a second, it's not just 9 hallmarks of aging, that's 9 targets that we can look to see if we can modulate the aging process and keep our cells in better shape. and that's really the genesis of SRW Laboratories. And we've gone on to extend our range beyond just the 9 hallmarks. So we look after your cellular health, but we also work with the experts around the world to formulate products which deal to the 11 body systems, like the cardiovascular system, the neurological system, etc.
Yeah.
And we're only just getting started. I think we've got 4 products now. We've got a 5th one coming later this year, looking at sarcopenia, and we've got a pipeline ahead of us next year.
So how long has SRW been around for? Is it relatively new?
It is, yeah. We've coming up 3 years is kind of how long I've been thinking about it. And we only launched a little over a year ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's actually really, really quite exciting. So can you tell us what the 9, like you've called them hallmarks and then define them as targets. So what is an example of one of the hallmarks of aging that you are talking about? So
the thing that the primary driver of how well we age, how fast we age, is our DNA.
Yeah.
And back at pharmacy school 30 years ago, it was just the code that made you who you are and the individual that you are. But nowadays, people will understand it as a living, breathing, very active molecule. And so one of the hallmarks of aging relating to DNA is genomic instability.
Yeah.
Now, our DNA breaks something like up to 100,000 times a day per cell. Like, it's just crazy that we even exist when that sort of thing happens. But we've got incredible repair and maintenance and just machinery inside our cells that look after your DNA. So, and if you think about it from a real life perspective, if you're talking to a patient or a customer, we all put sunscreen on our skin because it is the best thing that we can do to keep our face looking aesthetically as young as possible. And what you're doing there is you're protecting your DNA from the UV rays. And functionally, that's about that's the key thing that's actually happening there. And you only have to look at the back of your hand versus the inside of your wrist to see, the difference between what a bit of UV does. There are syndromes like progeria, which are actually issues with DNA repair. And if you don't repair it properly, you get old very, very quickly.
So how would one know if that was an issue for one? Progeria, is that something?
If you're a living, breathing animal, it's an issue.
Okay.
It's just a matter of just essentially putting sunscreen on your cells, in what can you do to protect your DNA? And these are things like, these lifestyle interventions like eating well, and exercising and meditation. These are actually things that actually physically
I find the whole DNA thing incredibly interesting. I mean, I'm not a biotechnologist or a scientist, but even with where we've come with DNA testing and genomic testing and looking at how, supplements are now a lot more targeted around, helping prevent, if someone's got a propensity to something, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to develop it, but you can then make conscious decisions around how you want to manage that in your life. And I think for a lot of people, it's a bit freaky. A lot of people don't actually want to know about that. Have you found that's the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that our health for lots of people is like a black box. It's actually like quite scary, and and of course, when you start thinking about health, you start thinking about the other end of life as well. And so it all gets very difficult and very nice to just actually sort of file away and not think about too much. But we are getting insights into how our cells are performing and behaving, and we can start to measure it. And that's with the new epigenetic age clocks that you've got, where you can measure your biological age. And I think what you can measure, you can manage. So, it might be that you do have to actually go, okay, I'm going to get the honest truth, because that's about as honest as it gets, what state your cells are in. But it's a plastic thing. We can take positive lifestyle steps and improve it. And I think that's the opportunity that naturopaths have got, as well as the pharmacists that we work with, is actually helping people understand that their genes are 20% of their destiny, and it's what genes are turned on. That's actually 80%, and it's lifestyle, and it's meditation, and it's what you eat, etc.
Yeah, I always think of the genetic profile as it's our foundation, which obviously it is. It's what makes us. But I always, with my clients anyway, what I try and get them to understand is that it's their choices that are going to affect everything that they do. And sometimes I think people don't feel like they've got a choice. And so they, you know, they might come and see a naturopath, they might come and see me. And I do try and get them to own their health decisions and choose the foods, the products. I mean, supplements are there to supplement and support. They're not there to kind of actually take over and prop you up. And so it's really interesting just getting involved with some of the science behind them, which I guess kind of leads into some of your products. So how do your products target these areas of aging that you've been talking about? Tell me a little bit about those.
Yeah, so we've got 3 products, Cell 1, Cell 2 and Cell 3. And Cell 1 is all about supporting healthy DNA structure and function. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then Cell 2, and you take Cell 1 from your mid-20s and on, and it's literally like sunscreen for your cells in terms of just keeping them cells in good condition. Cell 2 is about energetics and cellular repair and maintenance. And we're talking about mitochondria here, which is, you know, a word that people didn't talk about too much 10 years ago, but it's definitely in the vernacular now.
It's very much out there now. Yeah,
definitely. And it's your cellular batteries, and they decline about 10% a decade from your late 30s. So you don't really need to take Cell 2 any earlier than late 30s because you just don't need it. And then Cell 3 is about cellular housekeeping, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But you know, we get a buildup of cells in our bodies that are not particularly useful to us in our 50s and beyond. And so that's when you take Cell 3. So the theory is, you know, say Cell 1 from your mid-20s and on, Cell 1 and 2 from your late 30s and on, and then Cell 1, 2 and 3 from your 50s and on.
Right.
And so back to Cell 1, what we've done is we've looked at what molecules support DNA, you know, because what we're looking to do is stimulate the natural repair processes in our cell, or we're trying to reduce the levels of oxidative stress, which are, you know, will break our DNA for, you know, at some point. We use a really interesting molecule called hobamine. And hobamine is
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's from Himalayan Tartary buckwheat, and it is relatively new. Like, we're the second company in the world to have access to it. And it's, if you allow me a little moment to sort of dip into the science, but
you do.
When you've got a free radical and it bounces into something in your cell, its main, what it wants to do is it wants to get stable. Yeah. So an antioxidant kind of will do that for you. But if a free radical interacts with a lipid membrane, which could be around your mitochondria, your nucleus, or even around the site out of your cell, then the free radical becomes stable, but the membrane element that it just interacted with becomes radicalized itself. And these things are called, instead of reactive oxygen species, they're called reactive carbonyl species. And they're a nasty little animal, if you think about it, because what they do is, you can't even measure these things. They don't last very long in your cells. But what they do is they like to react with your DNA and with proteins, and they form literally a clump. And so what hobamine does is it reacts with that reactive carbonyl species, that reactive lipid that's just occurred, before it will react with your DNA or proteins. And it's the first time that anybody's been able to do that. And so this particular molecule just looks after your DNA more and looks after your proteins really well. And why that's important is that your body actually has a lot of trouble getting rid of that reaction, the adjunct. And the immune system tends to take a lot of interest in it because it wants to get rid of it. So this is actually the first time that you can sort of stop the downstream effects of oxidative stress and their impacts on our cells, on our DNA and our proteins.
So this is Cell 1 that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, I know from my own life and also from working with clients, you know, in your 20s, you're so much more resilient. You've got, you know, you've got that foundation of youth still coming through. As soon as you hit your 30s, it is, you don't bounce back quite so quickly.
Yeah.
But you're still okay. 40s, you kind of 30s, 40s, very similar. Then 50s is great at the beginning, and then a bit of a downhill slide towards the finish. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. So I'm really interested in that, trying to get the mid-20s to actually look after themselves while their body is still actually able to recover well on its own.
I mean, I think the perfect analogy is that, we put a dollar a day into our KiwiSaver account or whatever we're putting in.
Yeah.
And it's nothing right now, but in 50 years' time, that's a huge amount of money. You're paying for every dollar you're putting in, will be paying your future self $50. And if we look at it from a health perspective, each little bit that we do in terms of supplements and looking after ourselves and exercising and making good choices, that compounds over our life, so that by the time we get to 70, we could be drastically healthier than if we hadn't looked after.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about education and understanding again about choices, and knowing that at some point you will age, even though some of us don't want to, we do. But yeah, I think it's really important actually understanding that, looking after yourself in those 20s. I mean, teens and under is a little different, but in the 20s, you're out as an adult, you're making your own decisions, and they all have consequences. They have consequences much further down the track too. So yeah, I find that really interesting. So next one, cell 2.
Yeah, so we've designed Cell 2 to really focus in on cellular energetics, so the mitochondria. And so what we've done is we've taken astaxanthin, which is a really interesting antioxidant, and it's an antioxidant which sits in the membranes and looks after them, essentially. So we look after the mitochondrial membrane, which is under a huge amount of stress because it produces, the process of generating energy releases about 95% of the free radicals in the cell. So that membrane has a pretty tough time, and it's got loads of antioxidants in it naturally. But by the time we get to our late 30s, those levels have declined, and so the mitochondria needs an extra little bit of love. And then we also boost NAD through the precursor NMN. NAD is it's a molecule which is involved in over 3 or 4 processes in the cell, but a big part of it, what people know it for, is the energy perspective. But it also is a activator for the sirtuin genes, and sirtuin genes are those that run around and look after our genome and look after our cellular repair processes. The other thing, so we've put in pterostilbene in the mix as well, and so that's just a SIRT activator. So what we're essentially doing there is supporting the energetics and supporting the sirtuin genes, it just essentially tops things up for you. I mean, NAD, as we all know now, drops precipitously from the age of about 40. It's a really interesting molecule. It's if you sort of did all the maths, it's the most abundant molecule in our body after water. So it's just such a vital molecule, and for whatever reason, whether it's programmed into our system or what, but it declines rapidly. And there's a huge body of work now showing that when you supplement with NAD, that it has significant rejuvenative effects. It may not extend your your lifespan, but it's definitely going to extend your health span. Yeah.
And health span is really what we're all about.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting about the sirtuin gene, I always think of them as the painters and paper hangers of the body, because they are the ones that are kind of running around patching, repairing, and passing on the information. So I often with my clients try and explain to them what some of these little molecules do, because everyone's sort of Googling and coming in with information, but they don't really quite know what it is. So I quite like the idea of some of these things, and then they kind of understand a little bit more about what we're actually trying to achieve. So I think sorry,
I was just say there's just some amazing resource on YouTube. If you you search for sirtuins and on YouTube, and you'll find the actual animations of these genes and these.
I was just going to say, I've seen some animations of them. I'm sure there's an NAD one as well. I've seen a little one, I think through one of the companies, and it's quite fascinating. And it kind of, I think, explains it in a way that it's a visual thing that you can really understand what it does. So cell 3.
Yeah, so that's, I guess I call it fasting in a jar, right? So when we fast, we do all sorts of nice things. We stimulate autophagy, we we recycle proteins, we just give the body a decent bit of housekeeping. And so what I've done with this formulation is looked at what ingredients support the removal of senescent cells, look at what supports autophagy, what supports healthy levels of proteostasis, which is where we look after our proteins and make sure that they're in as best shape as possible. And it's a pretty neat formula. We do interact with that little protein called mTOR, which is a part of, as we know now, has an effect on how fast we age. Most people, not a lot of doctors in the longevity space will prescribe rapamycin, which is a drug that interacts with mTOR. We've discovered that a product or an ingredient from ashwagandha called withaferin A has a very similar effect on mTOR. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I love all this research coming out about products that we're so familiar with, but just taking aspects of their makeup and kind of doing something a little bit different with them. So from a perspective, if someone wanted to kind of get into working with these products, so let's say they're in their late 30s, would you still recommend they take 1 and 2, or would they just start with 2, or how does that kind of work from a product perspective?
Yeah, it's a good question. It really is just something that you talk through with your patient and say, look, this one specifically is to sort of help your cells travel well through time, and in terms of looking after your DNA. I think a few people know about telomeres, but this is designed to help keep them as long as possible, for as long as possible. And then so it's something that really everybody should take. And then you take cell 2 when you're starting to feel a bit of the pain of older age, right? Just getting out of bed's not so easy. Maybe instead of 3 wines, it's now 1 wine. These are the things that are giving you a slight hint that you need to pay a little attention and a little bit more love to your cells. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really fascinated by that, actually.
Okay, so I also understand that you're working on some new exciting ingredients and things. What information can you give us about those?
Yeah, so with cell 1, 2, and 3, we are doing a clinical trial where we've given our product and designed a protocol, essentially. So it's not just about the pills; it's about education and some lifestyle changes, with a view that we can, look at how far we can reverse the biological age of the participants in the trial. In terms of the new things we're doing, well, it's actually the next product off the line is a product that looks after sarcopenia, which is the muscle wasting that we all experience as we get into 50s and beyond. We have actually combining a number of products. One you may know of called HMB, which is HMB,
hydroxy
methylbenzoate, I think it is, or something along those lines.
I'm terrible with the complex names, so
I've just been calling it HMB for so long now. I've just lost the technical term. But what that is a metabolite of an amino acid, and it triggers the body to slow down muscle recycling and encourages muscle building. And it's been used for the last 20 years in hospitals and rest homes where patients haven't been able to get out of bed, and it just retards the muscle loss. So what we know that the combination of that plus vitamin D works really well in healthy adults in terms of retaining muscle, and if you exercise as well, you get larger benefits. And we've combined it with another ingredient called ornithine alpha-ketoglutarate, and that's also a key molecule, not too dissimilar to NAD in terms of its function in the cell. In terms of the energy cycles, and that's also shown to have some significant benefit. So we think it's quite an exciting product in terms of being able to give people who don't want to take protein drinks with every meal, something that they can just take each morning, but just making sure that they're walking and doing a little exercise so they get the full benefit.
That's really interesting, because there's a few products that have come out over in the last I'm going to say probably 2, maybe 3 years, directed at that whole sarcopenia type thing, but there's not a lot. They're still relying on protein powders, which are great. They're still a fine food and way to get that kind of protein in there. But it's just really difficult to get enough protein to rebuild muscle as the muscle wastes. So I'm sort of intrigued by some of those. The ornithine is interesting because I've got that's come up in a sleep product as well. So is the ornithine that you're talking about, is that another substrate of that, like a next step down the line kind of thing?
Yeah, so you can get all sorts of alpha ketoglutarate, and calcium is probably the most well known. But we liked ornithine because we didn't want to load the body too much with calcium, and ornithine as an amino acid has its own uses, as you suggested, which are synergistic with what we're trying to achieve. So that's the reason we elected for that particular molecule as opposed to calcium.
Yeah, and it's not a terribly reactive one. People don't seem to react very strongly to it either. It seems to be quite innocuous and quite acceptable, I think, by many people as well. So that's really cool. Now, we're also looking at giving away a 3-month supply of your SKI or SKL1 mobility.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about that? Because it's about joint health. So that's going away from the aging thing and specifically into a joint health. So is that a direction that you're going in? There's 2 questions in there. Tell me about the product, and then tell me about the direction that's heading in.
So the product is a combination of 5-loxin, which is a LOX inhibitor. So it's involved in helping with levels of inflammation and mobility in the joints, and natural eggshell membrane, which is an amazing substrate for all of the collagen and hyaluronic acid and all the components.
You got me a collagen there for a moment.
Yeah, definitely. It's a phenomenal product, and it's each of those ingredients are clinically proven to be effective on their own. And so we essentially put them together, and they have an effect of that is quite, you feel it within 24 hours. And you take it long term if you've got any tendon issues or any joint problems, because it gradually and slowly rebuilds the synovial fluid and also the linings of the joints and so on. So that's quite an exciting product, and it's going really well for us overseas. In terms of the product range, when we worked out our product architecture, if you will, we looked at cell 1, 2, and 3 as looking after your cells, and then we have got 11 body systems, right? So cardiovascular, reproductive, skeletal, etc. So SKL1 is the first product that we've got for the skeletal system. We've got immune one for the immune. We've got NRV1, which is about the nervous system, and then SIR1, which is the circulatory system. So we're just slowly but surely bringing out products which help people deal with these issues, because we know it doesn't matter how well we keep your cells, we might delay these things happening, but the issues are going to come at some point.
Yeah, and again, I think, just going back full circle to the beginning, it is also about those decisions made early on in life. I mean, one of the things that, as a naturopath, I sat down one day and did my own timeline to work out my own health process, and realised that I'd probably been born adrenally fatigued, been adrenally fatigued my whole life, had chronic fatigue since I was about 16, and not kind of fully recognised any of it. And just the decisions around some of the stuff that happened in those intervening years, I suspect could easily have changed the direction that my health went had I been put on a different pathway. So my passion is really encouraging people to do as much as they can for their base health, which is your cell type products, and then you add in what you need when you need it. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to keep going for life on it either. It could be something that you do for a while, that's fine, and then that's kind of all that's needed for that particular time.
Absolutely, and just being conscious of that. Obviously, when we're in our 20s and 30s, we're slightly bulletproof, but we're not at the same time. We think we are, and so doing preventative maintenance early on is great, and that's where like your DNA testing and other bits and pieces too give you a bit of insight into challenges that you may experience 30 years hence. But now's the time to start working towards strategies that you can build, and it just becomes habit.
So two things that I picked up on as well. You talked about research. So the research that you're doing, is that underway at the moment? Like you've got people involved in that as subjects testing these products. So when is that likely to be finished?
I'd say we'll get data out by this time next year, in terms of probably towards the end of next year. So it's a long wait, but that's just what we need to do to get the level of data that we want.
I totally understand that. Research takes forever. The other thing you mentioned was education. So is that something that's going to be available through your website as well? Is that as in resources, or as in trainings or courses, or for the public, for naturopaths? What sort of level of education are you talking about with that?
Yeah, so we do education currently for doctors and naturopaths. We absolutely can do that. And where we're, I guess, heading towards is providing, really having a conversation with the consumer to understand what their goals are, where perhaps there are areas in their life that we can pick up that might be able to help them, so that the view is, how do we help you with your health span so that you're just a healthier animal for much longer. And right now we're using technology which is available to us, but in the future there's some really exciting technology coming, which is going to potentially quite radically alter our aging trajectory and mean that we're healthier for much longer, which is, I think, quite exciting.
It's definitely, I think we have a whole new approach to aging, with this whole kind of 40 is the new 50 is the new 40 and 60 is the new 40 and all this sort of stuff. But I think it's also, accepting that we can age well, but at some point we are going to not be here anymore. Yeah. And I guess it's kind of what choices we can make in there to better look after our bodies. So I think that's been really fascinating. Thank you very much for coming along. Was there anything else that you wanted to comment on or add? Is there something?
No, look, I think just if people are interested in our products, just pop onto the website, which is srw.co or scienceresearchwellness.com. And we're here to be of service, and our mission is to help people to challenge the way they think about aging, and we know that everybody can do it better. So it's just a function of, let's just get out in front of it, and as naturopaths and pharmacists and people that are focused on helping people be well, that's a big part of, I guess, what we all seek to do.
So how can people access products if they want to find out more? Just go onto your website. Can they access them from there?
It's at Impact Health, also our wholesale partners of ours.
Yes, I saw that the other day, actually. Yeah.
That's right. So they do an amazing job.
Yeah.
Done trainings on their platform to their wider community.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the best place to start if it's of interest to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's I think that's all incredibly great information. So there is a draw. There will be a link that pops up on a slide once I've finished pulling this all together into a video format, with a link to sign up for a newsletter, and everyone that signs up will go in the draw to win some of these amazing products. So I just want to say thanks again for joining me. And actually a really amazing discussion. I never quite know how these are going to go, so it's like always interesting finding out more things. So if anyone watching this down the track has got questions for Greg, if you just email, you can either email deborah@nourish.co.nz or events@naturopath.org.nz, and I can pass them along to the team, and they'll I'm sure pass them on back to you at some point or get them answered, and I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, we've got an amazing naturopath on our team. So she's
is that Susie?
Well. There's Susie, yeah.
So, she's very onto it. So she'll probably be able to answer all those questions. So thanks very much for watching, those that are watching. And please remember to check out more on the Naturopathic Medicine Week website. So I'll just get you to hang on there for a moment, Greg. I'm just going to stop the recording.
Thanks, Deborah.